Hello, Avatar fans, and welcome to the next episode of the Avatar Online podcast. This is going to be episode 236 of our regular shows, and we're recording this on November 27th, 2021. This is the official podcast for the fan site Avatar The Last Airbender Online.com, and I'm going to be your main host, Morgan Airspeed Prime. Joining me on the podcast is Greg2B from the site.
What's up, everyone?
Excellent. So it's been, I think, about 6 or so weeks since the last podcast. The main reason for that is just that while there's roughly been news that's happened every week, pretty much until the news that happened this week, there really hasn't been anything significant enough to really get together and do the podcast. As you'll see here, we've probably got about 20 different news items on our kind of list, but really only a handful of them are really worth getting into in terms of a discussion, but we'll get into it here. So we'll start with sort of a lot of book/comic pieces of news, and we'll start with the big one that happened. At long last, Dark Horse have revealed a new comic. So this is not exactly, I think, the Korra comic we were waiting for, but I suppose this was one in the back of our minds that we sort of knew would probably hit at some point, and they decided to put this out now. So Legend of Korra, Patterns in Time. It's a short story collection. Think the Korra version of Team Avatar Tales. That's exactly what this is. The description reads, celebrate new stories from the Legend of Korra. Your favorite characters from Team Avatar and beyond are here in this collection of stories. From the heartwarming to the hilarious, join Korra, Asami, Mako, Bolin, Tenzin, and more familiar faces from the Legend of Korra, featured in stories specifically crafted by a bevy of talented comics creators. Be sure to add these all-new stories to your Avatar Legends library. It says writer Mike and Brian. I'm not sure if that's going to end up actually being the case in the end, but we'll see. Artist, it says Heather Campbell and Jade Casey, but that will be a list like probably 8, 6, 7 people long by the end. It has one colorist, Killian Ing, listed. It's going to release April 13th, 2022, and like Team Avatar Tales, it's going to be 72 pages, so that's 72 pages minus a couple of the sort of like start and end pages, so it's more like 68 or so like actual pages of content. $12.99, and we do have the cover, so it's a pretty nice kind of white background, Rava, and then Rava sort of like splitting Asami and Korra in half, like you see half of Korra, half of Asami. I don't really know what to make of the cover, and especially the name in terms of, is it just a fancy name for a collection or does it mean anything? So Greg, what is your initial reaction to finally a new book being announced?
Initially, it's really cool just to have another book and to have something coming out, since we've, been hearing about it for a while now, and it's sort of been like, I don't know, sort of hidden when it was actually going to come out. So the idea that we're, getting new content, that's always like a plus in general, considering how, things have been going recently. In terms of, the actual, sort of description and what we're getting from it, I don't know. That makes me, this definitely sounds curious, the relation to Team Avatar Tales, that's a nice sort of comparison to it. And, like you said, we did figure that we were going to get this eventually. I'm not sure if I particularly thought that it would be coming up now. I don't know. I think I was thinking more along the lines of like more of the one-shots rather than sort of a collection anthology type of situation. But with that in mind, that might, make more of the sense why it sort of took as long as it did to come out, since, pulling a lot of different people and a lot of different artists, even if they're not all listed on the listing quite yet, it's definitely like a big endeavor on itself. So maybe that's explaining why they've had, some issues getting this out, when we thought it might be out. But I don't know, it sounds cool. I think it's really going to depend on like the stories and just, sort of the range of what they tell, if they're more, interesting than not interesting, and how they fit, into the universe or into the stories that we already know. Do they really add stuff to it? We know that they're, per the description that they're new stories, so it's not stuff that we have had before. So it's definitely curious to see where they go with this, and how it relates with just the overall, I guess,
Mm.
the only thing that we really have to go by so far, which is just the cover image, which I think it is interesting. I think a lot of people seem to really like it online. I think it definitely is pretty cool. I like the style that it has. I don't know. I wonder how much that gears us towards the stories that are going to be in it, or if it's just like a cool cover just to be a cool cover.
Yeah, like it's one of those ones where like there's no way they're doing a Korra short story collection and there's not like a Korra and Asami short story. Like that's what I'm taking from this. That
Yeah.
one of them probably is Korra and Asami focused, and beyond that, the cover doesn't mean much because the Team Avatar Tales cover was kind of just generic team, which didn't quite happen because they were all new stories were a bit all over the place. And it is interesting, it does say all new stories, but I think most people like lean quite heavily into feeling that they will collect the other like free comic books stories for Korra into this, and they're going to just say all new because it's the first time in like a retail release, I guess. So I do expect Lost Pets, Friends for Life, and the new Clearing the Air from this year's book to be in here. Just because that's exactly the way the Team Avatar Tales worked. It had 3 reprint stories and the rest were new. And that, I think, roughly makes sense. It fits like the creators that they have in at the moment. Jade Casey, I'm not sure about the pronunciation, but she is the artist on Lost Pets. So unless they've got her back to do a new story, I think she's listed there because that probably confirms that book is in here. And I suppose Patterns in Time also fits the theming on at least 2 of those stories. That one of them's a Korra flashback, one's a Tenzin flashback, and then maybe we'll do something else. Beyond that, again, there's basically nothing to speculate, unfortunately, about what the new stories could be about, other than that it mentions like the team. So Tenzin, Korra, like Milo are kind of covered, I suppose, across most of the books that we already have. So Mako, Asami, Bolin are like the characters where you feel like, okay, something with them. Asami, Korra probably will get one. Maybe Mako and Bolin will get their own solo story or together, who knows. But it's hard to really speculate about that at the moment. There's a few other things just surrounding this that I kind of want to talk about. The first of which is just that I suppose this technically wasn't really like announced. Again, we at least me, I've been really focusing in on the statement that was made during the live stream a while ago, like I think 2 months ago at this point, that announcements would be coming very, very soon. Dark Horse, I suppose, there was an official announcement made about the next news item we're going to talk about, the Book 4 art book re-release. And even though this book is listed on the Dark Horse website, they haven't like officially talked about it on social media, but they posted about the other one. So it's kind of in this weird spot, kind of like Beasts of the Four Nations, where like they've half acknowledged it because it's on their website. That book wasn't on their website. The Book 4 art book isn't on their website, but they've officially announced it. I don't know what to make of that, in that they've spoiled some sort of exclusive reveal themselves, or it's not an exclusive reveal. And then like this came out effectively as part of solicitations from Dark Horse this month, but the Book 4 book wasn't in here, so I have no clue what's happening with that. The other thing is just the release date, that this is coming out in April, yet we've had Avatar books announced into like June effectively at this point. So I wasn't expecting a new book to be announced and to be coming out basically before pretty much anything else. Like this is like the kind of next upcoming thing effectively, because it's relatively early in the year. What do you make of just sort of that kind of confusing mess of like there's a few books here that have all been, we publicly know about them, but Dark Horse have not acknowledged them in different ways?
Yeah, I don't know. It makes me think that they're waiting for a time that makes sort of like a bigger splash about them, even though they are already out there. And I guess unless you're really sort of looking for it, you wouldn't necessarily, know off the top that this is here unless you're like paying attention to the listings and stuff, or, any of the fan accounts that, mention all the Avatar news that comes out all the time. But since it hasn't been on any of the like sort of, at least for this one, it hasn't been on any of the official places. Maybe they're still sort of waiting on that. It is interesting that the date is, so early in the year. I think we were thinking that whatever was coming would come a lot later in the year, if even that, with the way that they've been waiting on announcing things. So, I mean, it is nice that it is coming out earlier, and maybe because it is a collection of some stuff we've already had, that it can actually, come out earlier without it being, sort of pushed back. Although, you know, you have to wait on that the way that things go and with other announcements that we'll talk about later on. So, the date could be a moving target still.
And the interesting thing about this one is that I think everyone wants it to stick to this date because it's the day before the 10-year anniversary. So April 14th is the day the book one premiered. So this will be a really nice thing to have for that anniversary. But realistically, it's going to get delayed. I can't remember the last Dark Horse release that hasn't seen a delay, and that's not just factoring in COVID and so on. Even before then, we were getting books heavily delayed. Like Team Avatar Tales came out pre-COVID, and it's the most heavily delayed book because it got like 3-4 delays, and one of them was like a year. So I don't think that will happen this time. I think this is guaranteed to come out 2022, but I think it will slip a little bit because I just don't have, I have such little confidence in these initial dates, especially when the book has or has not been officially announced yet. Yeah, I wish we were able to speculate a bit more, but the only other thing to talk about is final line of the description. Be sure to add these all new stories to your Avatar Legends library. So the sort of second, I suppose, official mention of Avatar Legends. We have the Avatar Legends role-playing game. Now, this is Dark Horse calling the combined collection of ATLA comics and Korra comics your Avatar Legends kind of comics. So I suppose that confirms, I think, what we speculated about before, that this is just a way to refer to sort of like all aspects of the franchise and avoid the confusing aspect of everything's either ATLA or Korra, and this is how you, I suppose, refer to both of them. Avatarverse has been used a few times, and I suppose it may or may not be an official term, but Avatar Legends ultimately is the way to just refer to everything. So that's, I think, the first time Dark Horse have said Avatar Legends, but any thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I noticed that too as well, and I was like, okay, well, I guess we're just gonna go with that, which is fine. I mean, if we're gonna have as many stories as it seems like everything's going to be, then it's a good way to sort of just group say everything without having to say both names over and over again.
Hmm. And then before we move on, I suppose we just have to, I suppose, make some sort of a speculation about this. But where do you stand right now on the sort of kind of confirmed, but we don't know the status of it right now, new Korra comic trilogy? Do you think it's still a thing and it's just we're waiting to announce it? Because they said that there were like fun Korra stuff coming soon, multiple announcements like we talked about, and I don't think they were referring to the art books necessarily. So other new books, do you think it's a Korra comic trilogy, or is that scrapped because of Avatar Studios?
I don't know. I would put that very low on my personal hope production scale thing, just with everything else that's been going on in their sort of system of things. So I don't know. I don't know. I feel like that's what people would really be into and really want. I mean, but I would think even, it'd be more one shots that maybe could be collected into three rather than even like an actual, like three-part story, since we pretty much, are assuming that that's sort of shot now with sort of Avatar Studios and everything going on.
Hmm. Yeah, it's just the not knowing the full kind of status of it, and that's why I kind of wish Patterns in Time was announced via like an interview or like a news article, because they might have like a statement on like why this is
Hmm.
the new kind of release versus something else. But yeah, we're still left waiting on that. I don't know. It feels like they put quite a bit of time into whatever new trilogy they have in that. Like again, Rachel Roberts like literally responded to someone on Twitter and said that they're working on a new Korra comic trilogy. Now it was a few months before the Avatar Studios announcement, but you know, we've been waiting a while. Ruins of the Empire was ages ago at this point. Next announcement, like I said, is the second edition, both normal and deluxe, Korra Book 4 Balance art book re-release. So we have the new cover here. We have what the sort of deluxe kind of logo is on that version. Really, really cool cover image here. Very kind of clean, full animation style they're going for here, featuring like pretty much all of the key dynamics from book 4. So you have all the airbenders flying, the Colossus, Kuvira's there, all the sort of main 5 cast members as well, plus a burning Republic City. So they seem to go all out here with just a yep, this represents book 4 pretty well. And then the only other thing is we get confirmed, as we sort of knew already, forward by Seychelles Gabrielle. So the 4 main Team Avatar members each get to do one of the forwards. So that's good to know. In the deluxe version, again, original cover is the lithograph, and we have the Earth symbol on the slipcase. So, what are your thoughts on this new cover?
No, the cover is awesome. It feels very like, movie poster esque, in terms of how they have it, set up and everything. Which I guess a lot of their stuff does look like that, but maybe it's just the tone of, the season and the book that adds to sort of the coolness of it. But no, it definitely is really cool. I wish they would, release it as like a poster or something, because that looks pretty cool, that people would be interested in having. But no, it's definitely really cool. If you don't already have them, it's definitely, I would pick up this one rather than the other one.
Mm-hmm. Release date is June 21st, 2022, which is actually quite fitting. I think that is pretty much exactly 4 months on from the book 3 re-release. And I suppose we now officially have, at least we officially know about, all 6 of the deluxe editions. Obviously, Beast of the Four Nations sort of finds itself in an even kind of worse situation than Patterns in Time, because Dark Horse have never mentioned it, even though it's been delayed like 4 times now, postponed. It has a date again. So I'm not sure what's going on there, but it is now sort of ordered correctly, where this book has a release date before Beast of the Four Nations. It's still very, very close, as we'll get to, but that's the situation that we have. And I suppose we'll just sort of go into that. Again, this went from being indefinitely postponed. It's still not up on a lot of websites, but Previews World have it listed again, July 6th, 2022. So basically 2 weeks after the Book 4 art book re-release is the Beasts of the Four Nations release date. I'd be surprised if they let 2 kind of expensive books like this release side by side like this. So I'm thinking this will get pushed, or more like officially announced, for like September, October, to keep the 4 month gap between books. But do you have any thoughts on what's going on with Beasts of the Four Nations? Still not officially announced, really.
Yeah, I mean, that one just seems like it's had a hard time of things going through with it. But yeah, no, I mean, like you said, for that one, I wouldn't expect it to come out, that close at all. I mean, with everything that they're having this set up, it would make sense to have that come out later on, especially since, we're still like not completely sure on everything and how it actually works, and how it's going to be laid out and stuff. So it seems like there's a lot more to that one than, there might be leading on.
Mm-hmm. And then, yeah, speaking of like just, I suppose, dates for books, Avatar: The Last Airbender Chibi Volume 1 delayed again. Now, you may be wondering, how many times have I said that on the podcast? This is delay number 5 for this book. It's not a book I think many people are particularly excited for, because we don't know much about it, and I don't think people have a lot of high hopes for it. It's only 48 pages, but it's delayed again. This book is now coming out at 10th of May 2022. So a book that we've known about since February, was announced in February, is now coming out after a book we just learned about this week. That's what was so weird about the April date for Patterns in Time. At this point, I'm just very confused in that there's one new factor to this that I hadn't seen before, or might have been changed in a while. I don't remember when it came up, but that the Chibi comic is actually a hardcover comic. So it's got a little bit of a different format to it, but still, surprised to see it so heavily delayed. Is this down to production? Is this just a COVID kind of delay thing? I don't know. But what are your thoughts on yet another delay for the Chibi book?
Yeah, it's super unfortunate because that one, I mean, it really was now so long ago, and I know some people were, interested and intrigued by it, and the people that worked on it and whatnot. So I know it's too bad, but I know the mention of how it's actually coming out, the format that it's in. I don't know. That does maybe make sense why it has been a little bit sort of pushed back because of everything that's going on. I'm not really sure, but that is it's too bad. I mean, this seems like it would be a fun comic, and it's like it's done as far as we know, so it should, in theory, be able to come out if everything works, of course.
Yeah, so I'm almost surprised that we don't know about like Volume 2 at this point, if it's happening or not. It's kind of weird. But another book we've just recently learned about is a sort of a book in the sort of screen comic side of things. It's called Zuko Finds His Way (bracket Avatar: The Last Airbender) by Random House. The description basically makes it clear it is a screen comic. They're just not overly like listing it like that. It's 80 pages. It's going to screen comic style tell the Zuko's journey in like early book 2. I don't know what to make of this beyond that I'm taking this as they are more or less stopping the whole screen comics book 1 water volume 1 volume 2 volume 3 thing, and they're instead just doing these more specific character focused ones, which feels bad for anyone who was actually wanting to, I think, collect the volumes. Not that it's been confirmed they're not doing that, but this seems weird because they haven't finished book 1 yet. They're I think just past the halfway point, so there's still at least a volume 3 or 4 for book 1 to come out, and then this doesn't even seem to be covering the very beginning of book 2. So it's just a bit of a mess here. I don't know what this is. Obviously, I think for any sort of like hardcore fan or knowledgeable fan, this probably is not a book you at all want to get. But it's weird that they're still continuing with it if potentially it's not doing so well, and that's why they switched it up. But do you have any thoughts on Zuko Finds His Way?
No, I guess it's cool for who they're, marketing towards. It's definitely not for us, like you just said. So, the idea behind it is cool, but I don't know. It almost makes me think that they should continue it more as like a series rather than individual stories, unless they're just, trying to do the parts that seem like the coolest, throughout the different books, which in that case they should have like started with that, I think. But, that might be hindsight type of thing. So I don't know. This is something that's coming out.
Yeah, like when it comes to these books, like I got volume 1 just to see what it was like, do a review so people know what it is, and it's just really like uninspiring. It's exactly what it says it is. It's screenshots from the show with the dialogue as comic speech bubbles. That's it. Like, it's to the point where I'd prefer it if they just released the book that was basically just like the transcript of the episodes. The stuff that you can find like online on like the wiki and stuff like that in book format. I think that would be more valuable to me, just to have like, oh, here's a bound text version of the episodes. I can get screenshots wherever, but it obviously sells to some people, I guess. Even though I don't know, like, are people super interested in this? I don't know, because I think the comics are not like unsuitable for children or anything like that. So, it it's just Avatar merchandising. That's what's happening basically. It's Avatar. Everything is happening. Um, the final two pieces of sort of book comic news are basically some books that have recently released. So I suppose first up, the Kyoshi Novel Box Set released. I did get it. I've done a review on my channel, which you can check out if you're interested. But the big thing here, the surprise with this, was that up until I think I got the book, because I think I was pretty much maybe one of the first people to get it, everyone was convinced that all this was just the two books in a box. And it is, but it also has a bonus booklet in there that actually has a bonus deleted chapter. So it's like an extra chapter, but it also has like commentary to sort of explain why this chapter, which is in a kind of complete state, but the writer explains at multiple points, like from his point of view, why this chapter wasn't included in the book. It's actually really, really cool, and a lot of people were kind of interested in this and kind of regretting not purchasing it, but I just feel like Abrams Books did a terrible job marketing this, because they didn't say that this bonus booklet was in it ever in the marketing of this. Obviously, I quite heavily made fun of like the promo shot of it for being like all over the place with the lines, but it didn't say that this was in it. But it's a cool chapter. It effectively kind of covers Kyoshi entering this like competition between the clans on behalf of like Rongi's clan, and it's a really fun moment where like it's this really kind of honor, but it's also a fun thing where like they're honored to have Kyoshi to participate for their clan, and you get to see how kind of awesome she is. It's like an action set piece scene as she tries to take away from a lot of the building tensions between the clans by getting all the clans angry at her for being sort of like an outsider winning their kind of event. I agree with some aspects of what FCE says for why this wasn't included in the book, but actually ended up like disagreeing with some of the stuff that he said about why it was deleted. I think this would have been a really cool addition to the book, especially when I think across both of the books, my main complaint with the second book is just that it feels like it could have used a bit more page count to flesh out things a little bit more, especially at this section of the story. So I don't know. It's one of those cool things where like I really don't know where to place this in terms of canon. I suppose you ultimately have to say it's non-canon. Maybe some details you can say are, but mostly not. But people were interested is the main thing. But what are your thoughts on that? Just the whole situation of just them never once in marketing saying that this was in there, and then what you think of what we got.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I mean, it always seems like we're making comments on like the marketing of Avatar stuff in general, because it definitely is really cool. And from like the intro part that he has in it, like the idea of like not wanting to put out like your best work but putting out anyway because Avatar fans would be interested in that sort of stuff, which we are, hence why we're even talking about it now. Seems to like to some degree, like, they knew, or at least he knew, that it would be like a cool thing to put out, and it is pretty cool. Like, even if it didn't make it, and maybe some people think it should have been in there, just the idea that there is more content out there that other people could use on their own stories, or just other things to consider in the verse, even if it's not canon or anything like that. It's definitely a cool little extra bit to have, and it seems like that would be something that you would want to like make known, but I guess in terms of it like not being like an official finished thing, that I could see from that side why they might not want to emphasize it as much. But if you do have it and that's something that you want to get, that's really cool thing to actually see included in there. That makes it way more interesting than just sort of the books packaged together and box art that may look a little bit wonky.
Mm-hmm. Next thing, just recently, actually, just earlier this week, the Avatar: The Last Airbender official cookbook released. And I suppose with this, we also have this sort of like new book announcement piece of news, is that a listing went up for a gift set version of the cookbook
Oh
that
yeah.
comes with an Avatar apron. Now, there's no pictures or anything like that, but it makes it clear. I think the page count's the same. It's going to be the exact same book, just with an apron for like a slightly increased price. And I think it's June 2022 is the release date for that next year. I just thought it was important to, especially when I did my review of the cookbook, to really let people know that, hey, there's like a more complete, I suppose, for a collector version of this book coming out. And at least I suppose we found out about that before the release, so people could like cancel a pre-order, maybe put a pre-order in for this one. But yeah, the book came out. Obviously, I'm not much of a cook, and I realistically won't ever use any of the recipes in the book for the most part. But the unique part was that we knew going in, every one of these 60 recipes was going to have sort of flavor text that was written from characters' perspectives and apparently approved by Nickelodeon, Viacom, Avatar Studios, whatever way that works. And overall, I'd say that the book sort of like, it surprised me, but it was still sort of exactly what I expected. It's an Inside Editions published book, and a lot of what's here, I think, reads very similarly to a lot of the text from those Inside Editions books. Avatar Legacy, Legacy of the Fire Nation, and Avatar's Chronicle, where it gives sort of like the impression it's kind of new information, when it's just sort of like decent sort of like logical sort of inference that kind of this might have happened, and it's just not saying too much. In that, I'd say half of the recipes have flavor texts that are just, X character made this dish for me when I was younger and taught me how to make it. I now serve this dish to Y friend. And it's like, okay, fine, it's kind of generic. But then there are other ones where, like, Iroh mentions these like White Lotus cookies that they actually, when they play Pai Sho, they don't bet on matches, but they do bet these cookies. That's like the only thing. They don't bet money, but they bet these cookies, and this is the big thing you win as part of the Order of White Lotus when you play Pai Sho games. The only, I think, significant canon piece of information, we'll get to maybe a little bit of the controversial one in a second, is that in one of the recipes, Zuko mentions, it's a drink called the Firebending Masters. He mentions that it is now mandatory in Fire Nation schools to be taught the dancing dragon as a firebending form. So I thought that was actually quite a significant piece of information, because we'd always speculated about, like, will we ever go back to the Fire Nation schools to see how much they've changed? I think mainly to see if Aang had an influence, but also, how the actual history works with the Fire Nation pupils. But now it's nice to know that, okay, they're keeping, it specifically says they're keeping the location of the Ancient Sun Warriors a secret, but they're going to use their knowledge to help firebending going forward, which was kind of interesting. The kind of weird one that makes you sort of question if it went through the right approval kind of stages is there is an ice cream, cherry ice cream, that May writes the flavor text for. And then there's a drink that Azula writes the flavor text for. And the book at the very start makes it sort of clear that the cookbook is sort of a in-universe artifact, like the other Inside Editions books, that Aang and his friends have put together. And it says specifically, it's set after the 100-Year War. The Katara recipes make it clear it's set after North and South, because she's been back to the water tribes. And then we get this section where, like, May talks about how Azula doesn't like cherry ice cream because of the pit incident, which is her going crazy basically in the finale and spitting out the pit. And I'm like, oh, how does May know about that? But then the immediate recipe after that is Azula basically saying, like, I wasn't particularly, like, happy that there was a drink named after me, but I suppose it's okay. And it's this almost implication that the book is set at a point long after Smoke and Shadow, where, like, Azula has, like, redeemed herself in some way and is back on friendly terms with May enough that they go out for ice cream together, and May knows now that Azula doesn't like cherry ice cream. And it's kind of like, am I reading too much into your like setup for the book, or is that what you're saying? Um, and there's just a few little bits like that throughout the book that's kind of like, have they just confirmed the Zula's redemption here or not? But I don't know. Have you seen much from the cookbook?
No, I haven't seen that much, at least not in that sort of detail. I have seen some people, talk about the recipes, and I think I've seen one or two people actually make some things from it. So it seems like it's definitely, worth it if you're into cooking. But no, that is interesting if that is what they're sort of implying. I don't know, these sort of side books or however you consider them, even if they're, supposed to be considered sort of like in universe in terms of like the writings and everything with them, I would be surprised if they go through the same sort of like rigorous review process as something like the comics or the book did or anything like that. So the things being sort of out of place on like sort of the timelines of things, you know, I don't know. That seems like something that would just sort of happen, unfortunately. But if that is true, that would be interesting to see if that turns out true in like a couple years or whatever when they do continue the stories.
Hmm. Yeah, it's weird because I'd love to know more about this approvals process because clearly I don't think Mike O'Brien took a look at this book, and I don't get the impression any writer from Avatar or Korra did. So it's clearly just sort of the same people that say like the Legends role playing game are getting approval from. It's like licensor approval. And what does that really amount to? I know in an Instagram video from like a few months ago, she talked about how it is effectively her doing like everything in terms of the main content of the book. She's making the recipes, she takes the pictures of the recipes, and she writes the flavor text as well. Even though she's technically, I suppose, not a writer outside of just like cookbooks before, but they're allowing her to write this sort of technically canonical material so long as it gets approved. And what she said was more that like the approvals were more based around like, is it actually possible for people in the countries that this book will mainly be sold to actually get these ingredients to make these recipes, so that you know you can actually make them and it's not like a nightmare to try and find everything. And very little was said about the actual flavor text and what approvals they kind of went through. So I don't know. It's one of these things where like there clearly has to be approvals about like she couldn't have just wrote anything in those flavor text boxes. There's some sense of Sokka would not say that, Zuko would not say that. This word or this quote doesn't mean too much. But then clearly it's missing like a final a final sort of type of approval that is your sort of like continuity type thing, which is probably what is the biggest thing that tells me that it's more licensing marketing approval more so than story based here. That once this meets the sort of like Avatar marketing guidelines, it's fine. But what are your thoughts on stuff like that? These books, I suppose, all of the Inside Editions books, what do you think that approval process is for kind of low level material like this?
Yeah, no, I mean, along the lines of what you're saying, it wouldn't surprise me if there's like certain metrics. I mean, I would be surprised if they didn't have, anyone who's, more familiar with, the universe in general, on their team, specifically for this sort of stuff in terms of like making sure that stuff, fits, the general sort of like tone of the universe and sort of like the idea behind the sort of characters. But, like what you said, up towards sort of like continuity errors and sort of overall timelines of things, like do they have like a writer or a producer or anyone who's worked on the show from before actually looking through this at the end? I don't know. I mean, those errors also could be something that could be just sort of like quickly overlooked if someone didn't really like look for those overall in the grand context scheme of things as well. So sometimes some things do slip through. But I mean, these books in general are pretty like low level in terms of overall story types of things. Like they're just supposed to like feel, or at least I gathered that they're more supposed to feel like they're in universe rather than they actually are, like, adding stuff to the overall, scheme of things in Avatar Legends. But that could just be how I'm taking it.
Yeah. At the very least, it maybe just calls into question like any sort of thing where you're hoping that, oh, because this book was clearly made during like the Avatar Studios era, that like there's a better approval process or anything like that. It seems to be much the same as it was before, in terms of like these little types of errors got through before. And Avatar's Chronicle has a pretty bad one about like future avatars won't be able to speak to Korra, which is kind of blatantly wrong based on what we know. That made it into that book, and there's a few little things like that here. I think someone mentioned that there's another one where like I think Toph mentions the Cabbage Merchant and is like, when we met him for the first time in Omashu, when like she wasn't part of the group at that point, and it's sort of canonical that the group doesn't ever really remember meeting the Cabbage Merchant. That like he remembers them, but they are sort of oblivious that they've encountered him for the most part. And that's consistent with the comics as well, where like Aang walks into his restaurant and he's like, "Don't break my stuff," and he's like, "What are you talking about?" That like at least Aang doesn't remember. So there's little kind of tiny things like that. Otherwise, like the book actually has a few references to the comics. Like three of the recipes are directly like the Cabbage Merchant's Cabbage Restaurant, menu. So that's kind of cool. But yeah, I think that's all of the books and comics news. We'll move into this sort of gaming section here, which I don't think we'll be spending too much time with, but there's a few things worth mentioning. The first thing here, an Avatar: The Last Airbender mobile game is in development from Square Enix Mobile and Navigator Games. I saw a few accounts sort of be like, Avatar game in development from Square Enix, leaving out the mobile part both times. And it's just like, I see what you're doing there, but that is very misleading. But yeah, this is to make it really clear. Okay, we're getting a mobile game. It's not exactly what we want, but this still could be something interesting. Because some of those mobile games for different franchises are actually kind of interesting. And because like Avatar is our franchise, something like this could work out well. The thing with this is just that there's no information beyond that it's going into development. I suppose it is sort of significant that it's like involved with just Square Enix at all, but it is a separate kind of mobile studio. Do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, it's cool. I mean, I think, the idea behind it, like you said, some of the mobile games out there, especially if they go more towards like the action RPG mobile games, are actually, pretty involved and have a pretty, in-depth sort of like, development scheme for the actual games. I mean, I don't know if we're, going to be expecting something like, like Genshin Impact or whatever, or other higher tier mobile games, or like the Final Fantasy mobile games that essentially could be on like a desktop or like a console type of platform. So I don't think it's going to quite be at that sort of level, but even if it's a couple levels below something like that, where we're getting full CG characters, maybe something to do with how they're doing things in the actual shows and stuff like that, then it could actually be something that's worth playing here and there, as you would with any sort of mobile game. I guess it really depends, and we don't know anything about like what type of mobile game it is. Like there's so many different types that it could be, or it could be like more of a gacha game, or all the microtransactions and stuff like that. So there's like a huge broad range of what an Avatar mobile game could be. But like you said, the fact that it is something that is going to be worked off with Square Enix's what does it say, London mobile division or whatever, is something that could potentially be really cool depending on how they go. But I think, like many people have mentioned, it's not like around the corner or anything like that. Like even mobile games take years to develop. So, maybe when the show, comes out from Avatar Studios, we'll actually see something about the game at that point.
Yeah. I'm a little bit surprised though that it's specifically ATLA. Like they don't say like, oh, it's going to be Avatar Legends mobile game. It may be in the end, but and they're just using the fact that ATLA is the more kind of news focused kind of term at the moment. Um,
Mm.
I'd like to know like what the situation is there, because it'd be a bit weird if it's just ATLA, whereas you know there's going to be microtransactions. They probably could make it, kind of gotcha type thing, open like packs or whatever. If you included both franchises and had like Kyoshi era as well. Um, I think it
Mm.
could be cool.
Mm.
Like this is going to be popular when it comes out, just because Avatar is popular. And I'm just interested to see exactly what it is. So it's something to keep an eye out for. Not the game we're waiting for, but that might happen at some point. Next two pieces of news are basically Avatar kind of crossover events with other games. Iroh is going to be in Smite. This kind of adds on to the update from the event from I think last year, where they got like Zuko, Aang, and Korra I think into it. Now Iroh's going to be in there.
Mhm.
It's pretty cool. Like you can look up the information on like social media for like the cool animations they have for Iroh. You can tell they put a lot of effort into this one with the lightning, the tea, and that sort of stuff. But I think like a lot of people, it's kind of like it looks cool, but I don't really have the time to put into play Smite to get to the point where I access the Avatar stuff. With so much other kind of gaming stuff going on. But do you have any thoughts on the Iroh stuff in Smite?
Yeah, no, I mean the like you said, the animations and the model and how they have it geared towards the character that is a skin on top of, I think definitely works really well. I mean, I guess whenever you see one of these crossovers, it just makes you go back to thinking about if there was an Avatar game, how would it work having these characters since clearly they seem to translate at least in this sort of format pretty well with the amount of effort and work that they put into to making the skin. So I don't know. At least it shows you how the characters look in 3D, which is something that is of a topic now too as well.
Yeah, it just shows you that like Avatar is so well regarded that if they did finally get the go ahead on the game, everyone making that game would be like super fans of Avatar and would put as much effort as possible to make it as cool as possible. So hopefully it happens sooner rather than later. The next one here, a bit of a random one. Avatar: The Last Airbender cross Shop Titans crossover events. So I think there's two separate events here. The trailer they put out for this first one focuses on like Aang and Sokka joined this game, and there's a lot of like Avatar items, and I think Appa's involved somehow as well. This seems to be a game where it's basically like it's like a running a shop simulator type thing with RPG elements. It seems cool if you play that game, but again, the this is cool. I think if you play this game and happen to be an Avatar fan, the reverse is maybe a little bit more of a hard sell. But do you have any thoughts on what you saw out of this?
No, I think you're pretty correct. I mean, I think that works for most of these sort of crossovers.
Yeah.
Like if you're into the games already, it's a nice, thing to happen to see, in the game. But if you're not, then unless you're really, really sort of compelled to play the games, this chances are it's not going to be something you're really going to look into.
Mm. Yeah, but I would say just in terms of like something that happened relatively recently, the Fortnite update with Naruto stuff. I think that
Mm,
actually did quite
mhm.
a decent job for Naruto fans getting into Fortnite. I think that just probably comes down to I think the types of games, and that like Fortnite is like actually like a really well done like game that's sort of easy to play, and people know about the kind of battle royale genre. It's free and um, so on. So versus this Shop Titans game, which most people probably maybe hadn't heard about before, and do you really want to play this just to get some Avatar items? Not sure. Um, and then switching from video game stuff over to the Avatar Legends role playing game, we got the November update. It's really not much of an update. I was a bit critical of the first one, and again, I don't think they said all that much here. They at least explained why they couldn't say all that much, but effectively this update is just, hey, do the backer kit. We sent the backer kit. Here's how you get the backer kit if you haven't got the backer kit yet, which again was what the last update was mainly about. And then the actual update is like, we've been riding up a storm and things are going great. We're excited to say that a lot of things are in approvals right now, including most of the final text. Stay tuned here in the updates for previews of these exciting rewards. They do explain the process to, I suppose, go through why they can't say anything. As we finish the text of the book or prototypes of the accessories, we send them to Viacom CBS for approvals. Unfortunately, until they get all the way through the approvals process, we can't talk about them or show them to you. But rest assured that we're working hard and submitting everything as quickly as we can to ensure you have a PDF in your hands. We can't wait to get these rewards out as soon as possible. We'll also keep you informed of any delays caused by the volume of books. Getting enough paper, cardboard is a unique challenge right now. Stay tuned, Team Avatar. And then they end with the sort of standard ending, but they actually edited it to leave out the whole, like, each month we'll update you with sort of previews, new game materials and so on that they've done in the previous one. So obviously they may be expected to be able to do it a little bit more piecemeal. They can't really do that. I think my issue with this is just that they have set themselves this thing of like, we'll update you once a month, and they seem to do it at a very set time of the month, and they did it this month quite early, like on the 10th of November, and they had nothing to say, when I just would have preferred it if they just delayed it, because there's so little that they actually had to say here. It's just a little frustrating that they basically have next month's update, and if they don't show any previews, the book is out as of the next update. So that's just one of those things where, like, these updates seemed kind of exciting when they teased them at the end of the campaign, and it's not really amounted to all that much. But approvals, again, is probably why everything's being held up in Avatar. But what are your thoughts on this update for the role-playing game?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, there's not really much to it at all. I mean, going through approvals for any sort of process is always like sort of long and drawn out. So the fact that they're sort of, I guess, at least they're at the point where they can even, get stuff approved, which, it may come back and not get approved, which is always unfortunate when that happens, but at least they're going towards, that sort of step there. So I don't know. I mean, I guess it seems like they're going at a pretty, decent pace in terms of like if it actually reaches its goals and whatnot. So I don't know. We'll have to see, really with how, the delays or anything like that goes on, which, considering how stuff works for Avatar, is almost sort of like expected at this point, unfortunately. So I guess it's just sort of a waiting game.
Yeah, like, it seems like hitting the January release for the digital stuff, they don't seem to be suggesting there's going to be any sort of a problem. The physical stuff is obviously where the delays will and may come in. And that's why, like, the weird thing of, like, I think when they finished the campaign, they talked a little bit more in depth about the whole idea of, like, paper shortage is actually the sort of, like, big thing here.
Yeah.
And it's been 2 months, and they just say, we'll let you know if there are any delays. And just kind of recap the thing from before. So, like, have you got more paper, more printers in the meantime? Like, I thought that would be the type of update that we actually get, rather than, like, we'll tell you if anything goes wrong, but we're only going to update you once a month. The same with the whole, like, stay tuned for updates of these previews, but, like, you have the, I guess, in or around December 10th update, because, I don't know, I'd be a bit disappointed if they are only teasing anything from the final book on, like, the 10th of January, when the release is, like, on the 17th of January. That'd be a bit, like, last minute for me. The only other significant thing here is that the White Lotus tile is now a blue Lotus tile. Like, it still has the White Lotus symbol, but people were asking why they changed it from the more sort of show accurate piece to this blue version. and they say that the final version of the Blue Lotus tile is the approved art based on guidance from Avatar Studios. And they are specifically calling it Blue Lotus tile, which is kind of interesting, but I guess it's just the blue White Lotus tile is a bit kind of awkward to say. Now, this is obviously because the White Lotus, their outfits are white and blue, and I assume it's also maybe to avoid the previous one being a little bit more in the sort of red color scheme almost, and avoiding the whole Red Lotus connotation at all. But it's one of the few times we've actually seen Avatar Studios mentioned, so they're doing the important work, like deciding on the color of a random token that's part of this game. So, any thoughts on just this?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I mean, at least they're trying to communicate with us, what is going on and things being. I mean, I don't know. I'm sure there's more to it than they're letting on.
Yeah, because that seemed to be the one thing out of this that actually got people talking. Of us like, oh, I preferred the previous one because it was more show accurate. That like Iroh's holding a kind of brownish colored tile, not a blue one. But that's obviously what they're doing. So yeah, that's that. Next, we'll move into some merchandise news. A bunch of stuff sort of in early stages of kind of announcements. So loyal subjects we'll start off with. So first of all, some new stuff. They are going to be releasing a series of Chibi Figurines. So we're getting Zuko, Toph, Sokka, Katara, Aang. They all seem pretty cool, pretty accurate to the actual like designs that they have in the Chibi kind of thing. The only difference being that they actually show off more of Toph's face, whereas I think Chibi Toph, like you don't see her eyes at all. So that was a good change in my mind to actually like see the face of the character. I think they look really cool. The only problem is that once again, for I think anyone outside of America, the loyal subject stuff is not the easiest stuff to get your hands on. So I do like these. They don't seem super expensive. It's still, they are early renders. I don't think they're really like finalized pictures from what I can tell. So I do want to see what they look like final version, but I like these. But your thoughts on the Chibi figures?
The Chibi, I don't know. These feel like, I mean, maybe it's just because Chibi designs in general are more simplistic and straightforward, but these feel like, the most like accurate out of the gut go from any of the like figure stuff that we've seen so far, that I don't have like, oh, the head is too big, or oh, the hairstyle is like a bit different than what it is in the show or something like that. But no, these are cool. I would consider these, depending on how the real sort of physical models actually look.
Yeah, and it is interesting that like, yeah, they're Chibi, so stuff is sort of exaggerated, but outside of like how wide open Aang's mouth is, they're not really overly exaggerated, and I'd arguably say a lot of the sculpts on the mainline figures have been way more exaggerated than these. Like Toph's grin isn't like over exaggerated, Zuko's sort of like scowl, not really. Sokka has a little bit of a sort of like goofy expression, but I think that fits him more than like a lot of the faces they've put on the other figures. Katara's fine, and then here's the Chibi version of Aang's wide open mouth, but that's what they seem to do. In terms of more normal figures, Loyal Subjects also did, I suppose, announce, quote unquote, their Wave 2, which is actually really large. It does include some of the stuff that we knew about from before, in that we knew there was going to be a Katara figure, we knew there was going to be a Zuko, but now we get, there's going to be Jet, Toph, Katara, obviously Book 3 Aang, which we knew about, Sokka, and Zuko. Now again, these are just like early renders, but it's Jet in the only outfit that we really see him in. It's normal Toph. It's Book 1 Katara. It's Book 2 Sokka, and then it's Book 3 Zuko, but with his like Book 2 hair. Again, it's early. I assume that will change, because that was a really heavy criticism I saw when this was actually revealed for the first time. But I have more confidence in law subjects to actually get a lot of this right, because they do the multiple heads. They seem to have the most accessories out of like most of the figures as well. Like I said, accessibility for anyone outside of America is the only problem. I haven't messed around with one of these yet, so I don't know how good they are. But I overall do like the look here of these. We'll see exactly how they look when there are finalized pictures, but yeah, just the usual thing again of like some weird choices of like book 1 Katara, but book 3 Zuko, and then book 2 Sokka over book 1 Sokka is kind of weird. When everyone's kind of like, where's book 3 Katara? Where's the book 3 Katara figure? But what are your thoughts on this lineup of characters here?
Yeah, I mean, the lineup, like you said, is a bit sort of odd, but I mean, I don't know, I think, depending on how the final ones actually look, I think it could be kind of cool. I think out of these ones so far, probably Jet and Sokka are probably the ones that I think are the most interesting to me, and then probably Toph after that. So no, I don't know. I think it's cool that we're, continuing to get more and more of these, and depending on how the physical ones actually look, it should be cool to see. It is too bad that they're not more accessible for more people, but with so many coming out, I guess you can always find ones in some style that hopefully fit your taste.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, the most unique one there probably is that we see a Jet figure. I believe Jet did get a figure in the original toy line, so it's not like a debut, I think, action figure for him. But I think his design just is very action figure-y, so I get why they're doing him.
Yeah.
Next, Diamond Select have revealed their Wave 5. Again, we knew who it was going to be. I think we talked on the last podcast about the sort of promo shots of these, the concept stuff. These are the finalized versions,
Yeah.
so it's Blue Spirit Zuko and then like Book 2 Iroh, like Earth Kingdom Iroh. The big thing here is that the Blue Spirit Zuko, the mask is removable. He does come with the swords, but as usual, again, marketing complaint here. Why do Diamond Select never reveal ahead of time what actually comes in the box? That's what I really don't like. That like, are there any other accessories? Because Blue Spirit Zuko is very plain outside of like swords and the mask. Otherwise, it's just like a ninja outfit, basically. So I'd like to know if he comes with anything else apart from, I suppose, extra hands. And I can see a lot of people maybe taking the swords off this Zuko and putting it on the Book 3 Zuko from Wave 1, if it's even possible. Because again, the promo stuff showed the original Zuko as having swords. He didn't come with them, so that's fine. The bigger change is the Iroh. The preview stuff showed it as being like Jasmine Dragon outfit Iroh, where he has the fancy robe. The finalized version doesn't have that, so it's just him in a sort of like a normal Earth Kingdom attire. And the main accessory they're showing off with Iroh is hands shooting lightning. Also, weird different color green between the two shots. That's very weird. And then again, they showed a ton of accessories in the preview for this one, like teapot, teacup, a hand holding fire, the extra head that is him breathing fire, which looked amazing. So what's Iroh coming with? I assume you have to give him maybe a teacup or something. That'd be a bit weird if he didn't. But they have made some very questionable decisions with accessories before. Again, I'm pretty like off the Diamond Select figures just because in hand I don't think they feel particularly great, and the accessories are always kind of a little disappointing. But it is Iroh's first ever action figure that's not a Funko Pop, so there's something significant here at the very least. I don't have high hopes for Iroh being incredibly articulated, but it might surprise us. The head sculpt, I think, looks pretty solid. It's maybe not the best it could be, but it's a good first attempt. But what are your thoughts on this wave, the finalized pictures here?
Yeah, I mean, if these are the final pictures and everything, I mean, I think, they look okay. I mean, Zuko with the mask, I think looks pretty interesting. I'm not sure how much fun I like without the mask on. But Iroh overall, I think is pretty good. I do wish it did have more of the other elements that they mentioned before. But maybe this is like when you actually come to production, you can't actually afford to have all those different pieces, which is unfortunate because they showed those to begin with. So I don't know. I think Iroh overall, I think the sculpt of it, like you said, definitely does look pretty good. It'll be interesting to see how it looks more in like I guess sort of the packaging and when other people get their hands on it and get other additional pictures as well.
Hmm. So yeah, that's cool. Iroh finally gets an action figure. Um, Next up, we have just a quick update on the new Funko Pop that we heard about, the Book 3 Airbending Aang. It's finally been, I suppose, like re-revealed. It was initially meant to be a New York Comic Con release, but then they just stopped talking about it. If you remember correctly, the official Avatar like social media stuff posted about it, but then deleted those posts. So they were obviously told to take it down because they didn't have it ready to go. They re-revealed it as part of like I think the Festival of Fun or something like that, to coincide with this what's happening right now, the San Diego Comic Con Special Edition. So this is going to be released basically over the next week or so, I think, is the impression that I get, and pretty much every region it's coming out. Um, I believe for USA and most regions, it is a like official Funko website or Funko Europe exclusive. They have posts on Twitter about like where it is for like Brazil, Mexico, and so on. But they're actually talking about where you can get it. So it's nice to finally know about that again. Funko have the impression I got is that they really messed up that New York Comic Con event, and this is effectively that event part two. Um, so that's finally coming out. Do you have any thoughts on what happened with this?
Yeah, no, that is a bit of a bungle, but yeah, I guess it seems like they just weren't really ready for it. But it looks cool, and I'm sure many people are gonna be really wanting to get in their hands.
Yep. Next, on the merch side of things, final bit is there was an official Avatar: The Last Airbender subscription box announced, and it's also sold out now.
Mm-hmm.
So this was a kind of cool thing until it was revealed that again it's only accessible for people in USA and Canada. And even if you were in Canada, the shipping was pretty high on it as well. So I don't know how many boxes there ended up being, but it's a quarterly subscription box for a box that's going to have about 6, 7 Avatar items, all official merchandise. And yeah, this sold out at a point where they only revealed one item. Like at the time, they had not shown on the whole website for this a single item that they were ever going to have in the box. Then they showed a snow globe, when the iceberg thing, and it sold out. They then spoiled that there's also going to be a Air Nomad style hoodie. That's a kind of cool item, but again, they revealed that after it had already sold out. So if you're wondering if Avatar is popular, it's very popular. This thing sold out like very very quickly. Um, it seemed cool. I just wasn't willing to put down the like. I probably had to pay like double the price if I was to like use one of these kind of services to somehow get it to me. Especially when they hadn't revealed anything at the time. So unfortunately, I missed out. But that's just what it is with these things. So yeah, do you have any thoughts on the Avatar subscription box thing?
Um, I don't know. It seemed, like you said, it seemed like a cool idea and a cool concept. I did see, the one item that they did release, and I thought it looked okay. It didn't particularly make it seem like really, something that I had to get, just based off of that one thing. I mean, the mentioning of the hoodie, which I don't know if there was an actual image to go with the hoodie. I can't remember that. But I don't know. It seemed like a cool thing, but without seeing more of the stuff in it, or I don't know. It didn't really seem like it was quite, worth it for me. Because I did see like when there was like, oh, there's like a limited amount left of it or whatever. and you could still potentially get it. And it wasn't particularly overly expensive if you're in the right region to actually get it delivered to you. But I don't know. I mean, I'm definitely still interested. I think when it comes out and I see what people say more about it in terms of how it actually how the overall items actually are. Okay, yeah, that's pretty cool. Um, maybe be worth it to, jump in it sooner on the next set of it or whatever. But, as is, it seems like it's a good idea that, could potentially be pretty cool depending on what actually comes out of it. So I'm curious to see when people get it, what they actually think of the actual items, and that'll, inform me on the next one to actually get it or not.
Yeah, the thing with me though is that like this company, Nickbox, and they have like a SpongeBob box as well. They always have a series of figures, one in each box. They haven't revealed that yet for Avatar, but there was like a silhouette on the website that made it seem like that was something that's going to be a part of this. I'm surprised that wasn't like the
Yeah.
first thing that they showed off, because um it probably will be like a series of like the first four boxes will have like a figure with the same type of base that might join together.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but obviously this one is completely sold out. Even if you get the second one, you're going to be missing the first figure. I felt a little bit like, oh, that's actually a really nice hoodie. I really like that, but again, it would have been like double the price for me, so probably not worth it. But I assume something similar will go on sale with maybe slightly altered colors or something. That's what tends to happen with these things. Um, but yeah, it's just something to keep an eye out for. This merchandise. You can probably get some of the stuff on eBay after a certain point. I think that's what usually happens with some of that like loot crate style stuff. Um, Next up, we move into some live action Avatar Netflix show information. So the big thing here is just that it has finally gone into production. It started production over the last couple of days, and there was a bit of news basically on the day it started production. Like they obviously released some pictures of the main cast members that we already know about, and talked about how they're going to be doing a lot of the shooting in a sort of volume, which I think is a term that people will mainly know because it was the technology used on The Mandalorian. So the big giant sort of like cylindrical kind of screen thing to create the backgrounds, and it allows them to do a lot with like CG kind of easier. So they're doing something very similar here with this show, which is actually good for a show that's going to require a lot of CG. So that could be very good. Before we get into the other casting news, I suppose, do you have any thoughts on what you've heard from the just the show starting production and the little bits of information that have come out?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, the idea of how they're going about producing it, I mean, it seems like they're at least, trying to give it the best possible, sort of outcome, which I think is like, the best we could really hope for. We'll have to see how well that actually translate into, actual production and how everything actually flows together. But again, this is like super early. Like it'll still be quite a while before we see anything in terms of like, unless, stuff's leaked or anything like that. It'll be a while before we actually see things in any sort of like even like semi-finished form, if they would even release any of that sort of stuff. But it's cool that they're talking about it and they're putting it out there. So unlike other places where we're sort of waiting for some communication, we know things are actually moving along, and some of the people that are involved with it in terms of like the production and how they're actually going to do that. So no, it's definitely cool that they're doing it. We'll just have to see how it actually turns out in the end.
Yeah, and the other piece of news is we have four new characters cast for the live action. So we have Daniel Day Kim is going to play Fire Lord Ozai. Paul Sun Hyung Lee is going to play Iroh. Lim K Siu is going to play Gyatso, and Ken Leung is going to play Commander Zhao. So two lost actors here in the Avatar show. Paul Sun Hyung Lee, the Iroh actor, was in The Mandalorian as a kind of pilot character, and I'm not at all familiar with the person they have playing Gyatso. So I know the lost voice actors pretty well. I think they've chosen like the main cast, people who seem to fit the characters. I know people were very excited about the Iroh casting, especially. Um, Daniel Day Kim as Ozai, I think that definitely could work. Maybe Ken Leung as Zhao, and is like, is that good casting? Might they go for maybe a slightly different type of Zhao? Um, we'll see, but I assume once we maybe get pictures of people in costumes, it'll look a lot better. But yeah, they seem to be doing a very good job with the casting so far. I'm not seeing a lot of complaints at all, so that's good. But do you have any thoughts on these four characters?
Yeah, no, I think, from what you can gather from what people are saying, it seems like, at least in terms of casting for, whatever that's worth in terms of like how, the people actually, do the roles, which is what matters in the end. It seems like people are on board with it, which I guess is sort of like half the battle to begin with. So, at least in terms of that direction, people aren't sort of like blasting it just purely on that alone. So yeah, no, it's definitely in some sort of direction that seems to be positive.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's one of those ones where like, is this going to be a super secretive production where we just don't hear anything? Who knows? Like you said, it probably will be a few months before we really see anything significant. But I'm guessing they're aiming for probably like what, late 2022 release or like early 2023. I don't think we know I don't think they've said any sort of release date. Um, I think they had one initially, then they took it off Netflix. I remember talking about that a few months ago, but yeah,
No,
it's
yeah.
probably something like that. I think, based on other sort of productions. Like, I think the main stuff I've been following is just that, like, yeah, like some of the Star Wars stuff, like Mandalorian, it takes like, yeah, like just less than a year in front of camera, and then stuff like that. So we'll see how it works, and if anything happens. But it definitely made me think, and it brought up again the whole idea of like, well, the one Avatar Studios piece of news that we have is that they said that the movie was going into production towards the end of the year. Has it happened? Are they announcing when it's going into production? Like, that's the sort of communication where it's just like, is it like secretly being done in the background? Will we hear something? I don't even know. Um, that's why the communication on that front is kind of weird. Has that been delayed? Do you have any thoughts on that? Do you think there'll be an announcement about the Avatar Studios CG movie?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. It's interesting because animation tends to be more. I don't know. I always feel like it tends to be more secretive in terms of like when stuff is actually being done because of generally just like there are still like timelines and budgets and stuff like that, of course, but it always seems like that comes it sort of comes and go. Like you get like the initial sort of announcement, then things are just sort of like locked off for a bit, and then when there's like ready for like a trailer is when you would actually like get some information. There's not like as much in terms of like like leaked cast photos or leaked set photos or anything like that. So I don't know. I could see maybe sort of a mention when they're sort of starting production, if even that. But I also wouldn't be surprised if we don't hear anything for a while on that sort of front.
And then the last piece of news is something that's basically happening in the next couple of hours, and that is that it is San Diego Comic-Con this weekend, which I was surprised to learn about. Special edition San Diego Comic-Con, because the normal San Diego Comic-Con was a Comic-Con at home again this year, so here's the redo of that. It's kind of weird. Very little hype behind this one. But they're doing another Braving the Elements live podcast, like they did at New York Comic Con, and it seems pretty generic so far. Janet Varney, Dante Bosco, official podcast. That's really about it. They don't seem to have any guests or anything like that, so I have no clue what this podcast is going to be. Like, is it going to be an episode review, or are they just going to talk to the fans? Because what's their topic, I suppose, is the big thing. I assume they're going to fan Q&A after a few minutes, and that's going to be most of it. Um, I'm not at all excited about this, and when I talked about it on my channel, I didn't get the impression anyone else was particularly excited about this, because nothing came of the New York Comic Con panel, and this looks to be like worse than that. So what are your thoughts on this live podcast at San Diego Comic Con?
Yeah, I mean, this is really just another thing if you're, part of the con that is cool to go to, but from outside perspective, there's not really, much to take away from it. It's one of those just like if you're there, it might be cool. If you're not there, then it's like, you can just sort of forget about it almost.
Hmm. Yeah, and I suppose just while we're on the podcast here, have you been keeping up with it all that much since it started?
I'm sort of like off and on. Usually for interviews is when I will check it out. Just because those are, somewhat interesting, and there are some like little tidbits, especially the ones that are more like production focused, since that's, more of my personal interests. But as far as like the episode ones, I haven't been keeping up with those that much.
Yeah, pretty much the same for me. I was initially listening to the episode reviews, but then it became super clear that like they are taking it slow going through this. That I just don't have the time to stick with them going through it so slowly. And then the weird spoiler thing they have about like their audience is following along with
Hmm.
them. I just don't really like that at all. Um, but yeah, it mainly for me is like the interviews when they have writers or production people on, just to get a better view on that side of things, because uh, I just don't get much out of voice actor interviews for the most part. Like I listen to a few of them, but obviously they're not really Avatar focused in that it's mainly about their career, and then they mention the Avatar stuff as part of that, which is fine, but like it doesn't overly interest me. So yeah, it's just a bit unfortunate. Like it was kind of exciting at the start, but now it's just. I think the second it became clear that like they have insider access to a certain point, but like they're never going to be the ones to break Avatar Studios news. It was just like, yeah, I know what this is. Um, it's a fan podcast that just happens to be run by people involved with the show. That's more or less it. So you know, do I expect anything to come from the panel here? Not at all. Not at all. Um, I I'll take a look, I suppose, later on maybe, and see if anything comes out of it. But yeah, this is completely for people who are in the room, not for anyone watching at home, if you even can. So yeah, that's that. And then from what I could tell, I don't even know if there is any news happening or major panels happening at this event, because I've seen nothing about this. I suppose just yeah, in general for you, like, did you know that this Comic Con special edition was happening?
So yeah, I do remember them mentioning this when they were, I think it was like during the summer or whatever, when they were like scheduling things and whatnot. They did mention that they were going to have one later on the year, which seemed odd because that's like, after New York Comic Con. But I guess it's just because of with everything going on and trying to schedule things and having things actually work that people can actually go to. They did mention this a long time ago. I didn't know that Brave and the Elements was going to be part of it, if Brave and the Elements was really even that popular of a thing when they did announce it. So that's new to me for sure. But yeah, I mean, it's just, another one where they're trying to keep the cons going, which I think is, a cool idea in general.
Mm.
Since everything's been sort of pushed around and whatnot.
Yeah, but other than that, that has been the podcast. We got our kind of big piece of news, a new Korra comic, but like a lot of people have probably said, it's not really the comic we were like waiting for. It hasn't done the thing that we kind of wanted it to do, and that is like, can we finally like get excited knowing what a piece of content is? Which kind of was what I think people were expecting with like, oh, if they announced the next Korra comic trilogy and it was set in the Fire Nation, we could speculate about that, but it doesn't leave us too much to speculate on. Still no Avatar Studios news. I guess at this point we're kind of just waiting to see when they announce the thing going into production, or maybe maybe February next year for the next investor thing, and they'll probably have to say something there, which is is a really interesting thing just from a news perspective, that like they won't communicate at all for the whole year, but they got to let the investors know. They have to let them know the status of the Avatar Studios, and that's when we'll find out. So I don't know. Do you think we'll get an update at the February Viacom event, if there is one?
I don't know. That might be the best place for news, and I'm sure many outlets will be looking forward to that, just for that little bit of news, which I guess is kind of funny in a way.
Yeah, just it's just how weird the year has gone, that like we randomly ended up sort of coming across that big announcement, like not really expecting anything, and it happened, and there's been no follow up since, and we're more or less around to a year since then, and they're outside of now knowing that the movie's a CG, there really hasn't been an Avatar Studios update like all year, and so hopefully things improve. But yeah, that's been episode 236 of the Avatar Online podcast. It's been myself and Greg. Thanks for listening, and bye.
Bye bye.